Hi, I'm your host, Nicole, and welcome to Bookish Alchemy, the podcast where we explore the mysteries of the universe through the lens of some of my favorite reads. There's a thread of universal truth woven between the lines of the world's most sacred texts and forgotten books, and this show is my attempt to trace it all back. In today's episode, we're moving into part 3 of The Great Initiates by Édouard Schuré. We're about to meet the most mysterious man, thrice great and lord of the threshold. He is the winged-footed revealer between the above and the below, who lives on the edge of the veil. And it's a very exclusive neighborhood. Even if you didn't know much about him, you've definitely heard of him, because his caduceus has been used throughout pretty much all things related to medicine. He is a master of all things, the ultimate messenger, trickster, revealer, alchemist, and magician who guides souls between the realms. His wizard vibe is the blueprint for Merlin, Thoth, Gandalf, maybe even Doctor Who. Playing with reality and teaching others how to wield their power without fear or judgment. Meet Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great and lord of the threshold. Let's start with a quote from the man, the legend, himself. Only a few will actually heed to his advice. But in truth, I think it was only really meant for the few. Listen to your inner selves and look into the infinity of space and time. There reverberate the song of the stars, the voice of the numbers, and the harmony of the spheres. Each sun is a thought of God, each planet a mode of that thought. In order to know divine thought, you painfully descend along the paths of the 7 planets and their 7 heavens, and ascend once again. What do the stars do? What do the numbers say? What do the spheres revolve? O souls that are lost and saved, they relate, they sing, they resolve your destinies. Schuré doesn't present Hermes as just one man, but as a timeless archetype, a divine messenger who speaks the language of the stars and whose teachings became the foundation of sacred science in Egypt and the Western mystery traditions. If we're going to attempt to understand Hermes, we need to understand the world which he descended into. And by saying descended into is meant to imply that he was otherworldly, a higher level consciousness, interdimensional being. So, yes, let's just use the crazy word here and just call it what it is. He was probably an alien. And he first appears to us in ancient Egypt. Egypt was more than just a civilization. It was an influential one, and a living temple, as Egyptians are known for expressing themselves as the cosmos themselves. According to Plato, the high civilization of Egypt was unchanged for at least 10,000 years. The wealth of numerical and scientific knowledge encoded in the structure of the Pyramid of Giza alone is so vast that it's considered anachronistic. It's just so far beyond the supposed capacity of its age that it's overwhelming to study and know of all of its implications. The entire land itself, from the layout of its temples down to the geometry of its pyramids, was built to mirror the cosmos. And Egypt was the cosmic mirror, preserving the wisdom of Atlantis in stone and by symbol. At its center of this cosmic mirror was the Sphinx, the first, great, most famous and talked about work of Egypt. And yet it's a silent sentinel of mystery. Throughout the mysteries, the Sphinx proposes a riddle at its entrance to test the worthiness of those who wish to enter. The version in Greek myth proposed, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Oedipus answered, man. As a baby he crawls on all 4s. In adulthood he walks on 2 legs, and in old age he uses a cane. And in lore, this answer granted him safe passage and eventually the throne. On the surface, this is a clever riddle about the stages of life. But it goes a little deeper because it's actually a bit more like the evolution of consciousness through the stages of the soul's incarnation. In the morning of life, like babies, we crawl on all 4s, but symbolically, this also points to our first stage of consciousness. Being ruled by instinct, sensation, and survival. It's the primal self, close to the earth, not yet aware of higher truths. At noon, we walk upright, on 2 legs. This represents the human self, standing in the full light of reason, choice, and individuality. We begin to understand ourselves, our purpose, and the world around us. This is the awakening of intellect and free will, the blossoming of human consciousness. By evening, we walk with a 3rd leg, a cane. Symbolically, that 3rd leg isn't a weakness. It's wisdom. It's the staff of the initiate, their magic wand, let's say. The 3rd leg represents a new support system. It's spiritual understanding, inner sight, the earned insight that comes from experience and reflection. The journey from 4 to 2 to 3 reflects the initiatory path of the illuminated self who has remembered who they are. I'll let you do your own reflection on the nature of 4 to 2 to 3. But when you consider all angles, what the Sphinx is really asking is, do you know who you really are? Can you trace the origins of your own evolution? And now I'll bring this back to Egypt, because in its tradition, the Sphinx was actually the guardian of this specific sacred knowledge. And it was intended to symbolize this fusion of elemental powers as the perfected human. So when we are ready to pose the big question for ourselves, we can always look towards the Sphinx to remind us, even if it's only subconsciously. Fire, as the lion, is courage and will. Earth as the bull is strength and grounding. The air is represented by the eagle for vision and spirit, and water is the soul embodied by the human as consciousness and love. Our bodies are the clay vessel made from the salt of the earth, filled with water, holding air in our lungs, and the divine spark of fire, the spirit that lives within. So to solve the riddle of the Sphinx was to realize that you are the answer. So it's one thing to look at Egypt in awe and wonder, and it's another thing to apply this lens and imagine how differently the ancient Egyptians used to think. This fourfold being is also echoed in the chariot of Ezekiel and by the fixed signs of the zodiac: Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, also known as fire, earth, air, and water, the microcosm of the macrocosm that embodies all the forces of nature, implying that all of the elements control and explain each other. They contain one another. And if that isn't enough to just completely blow your mind, the juiciest detail is that Schuré actually credits the Sphinx being carved by the oldest human priesthood of the red race, directly implying that the people in the age of Leo had both posed and solved the great question. And where other cultures crushed the priesthood for political gain, Egypt flipped the script and honored the priesthood over kingship. It was the priesthood that disciplined the kings, maintaining this cosmic law of rhythms and cause and effect. And this priestly class is where Hermes comes from. Known as Thoth in Egyptian lore, Hermes was both man and myth, an initiate, priest, philosopher, and magician. The name itself is like a title, similar to Manu and Buddha. He embodied a human to become the first and great initiator of Egypt and keeper of esoteric traditions. Hermes is also the planetary energy of Mercury, as the messenger of the gods, ruler of communication, intellect, and alchemy. And as elusive as his corresponding metal, quicksilver, he can also reflect a deceiving nature if you're not ready for what is to be revealed. From the spiritual lens of the world, the secret affinity of everything is bound together by an invisible thread, and the name Hermes is that magical sound itself that calls it all forth, as if his name is the vibration of the spirit expressed through him. When St. John received his visions of the heavenly order, the ancients attributed them to Hermes. Carl Jung even extended this even further by noting how these revelations could appear as unexplainable patterns in the fields or skies. For example, like crop circles, stars, comets, or maybe even other unexplainable objects in the sky, like drones. As if this takes on a mercurial effect of spontaneous initiation is appearing through strange irrationalities. Through his own initiations, he was taught this history of humankind, the healing power of minerals and plants, the secrets of sacred architecture, astrology, and the harmonics of music. But holding the knowledge of it wasn't really enough. He had to embody it, and so he did. He became the bridge between the worlds of spirit and encoded the mysteries within a symbolic language that would live as pillars of truth to stand the test of time. He is the actual inventor of the sacred hieroglyphics, and designed this language in a communication style that is intended to evoke, not explain. A symbol doesn't describe a black and white truth. It will reveal to the soul when they are ready. The symbolism is multi-layered. It's constantly revealing more of itself as it feels safe to. Hieroglyphs are a language of power, the script of gods and kings, initiates, and immortals. Beyond just a writing system, they are conceptual, ancient magic. Each glyph holds a sound, a meaning, and an energy, a visual vibration that speaks in many ways. Each trace the thought forms of ancient consciousness as universal keys. 22 symbols echoing the 22 Hebrew letters, each containing a number, vibration, and triadic force. When spoken with intention, activated power across all three worlds of the divine, intellectual, and physical. Many traditions regard these symbols as the language of God, the creative patterning that gives form to reality. Alchemists like Manly P. Hall believed these letters were living energies, keys that, when used with will and intention, opened access to cosmic wisdom. So it's pretty clear that Hermes is giving us next-level wizard, as he lays out one of the most powerful frameworks in the esoteric tradition, the descent and ascent of the soul. O souls, you painfully descend along the paths of the 7 planets and their 7 heavens and ascend once again. This isn't just poetic cosmology. It's spiritual physics. Hermes is revealing that each soul descends through the 7 planetary spheres, each one governed by a cosmic intelligence. Through them, the fall of the souls takes place, and also the rise of their ascension. This descent into this matter isn't a punishment, it's purification. And the ascent to return is the mastery. In a way, this unifies all religious beliefs, because it illustrates both beliefs that we descended from God and that we are ascending back to God as true. The 7 planets serve as the gates for this transformation. For example, the moon governs births and death. Mercury is the gate to knowledge. Venus holds the mirror of love, where souls will forget and recognize each other again. The sun is an everlasting beauty. Mars holds the sword of justice. And sitting on the throne is Jupiter, holding the scepter of supreme power, which is divine intelligence. And at the edge of the world stands Saturn, which there are so many other names for. In myth and lore, Saturn can also be known as Kronos, with a K and a C, Uranus, and Father Time, as the final gatekeeper of universal wisdom. And the most infamous alias of Saturn is when it is known as Satan, the Antichrist itself. But beyond Saturn is complete union with Source. In the antiquities, it is said that, quote, the most beautiful are living in the solar region, while the most powerful rise as far as Saturn. Some even rise to the Father, themselves becoming powers among powers. For there, where everything ends, everything eternally begins, and the 7 spheres intone in unison. Wisdom, love, justice, beauty, splendor, knowledge, immortality. The game is to act out all parts, and it ends when all the parts have been played. This septenary pattern of the soul's evolution is also echoed in the colors of the rainbow, the tones of the musical scale, and chakras of the body. We are threefold in essence, in body, soul, and spirit, but 7-fold in our unfoldment of evolution. The outside of things is like the inside. Human beings are mortal gods. Gods are immortal humans. Happy are they who understand, because to understand this is to hold the key to everything. These mystery schools that Hermes founded were no ordinary institutions. They were places of silence, purification, and sacred ordeal. The teachings were veiled in triple layers of moral, symbolic, and cosmic. Not to hide the truth, but to protect it from perversions of misuse, because truth was an internal fire that was lit within, and only those who had refined the will, intuition, and reason could touch it without being burned. Modern-day experiences separate the body, mind, and spirit, but the ancients knew better and trained on all their whole ternary nature of being, physically, morally, and spiritually. Everything was an invitation for further transformation, not to escape the world, but to embody the divine in it. You really start to see the interconnectedness of beliefs and cultures because of Hermes. His revelations revealed Egypt's sacred trinity and logos in a way that seemed to parallel the traditional archetypes of creation, preservation, and transformation expressed throughout the ages. The logos of Egypt is represented through Osiris, the father and spirit, Isis as the mother and soul, and Horus as the sun and light, giving off the same energy as the Vedic and Christian trinities. Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, is the one who joins humanity 3 times over to encode and preserve this vibrational energy of the word, the logos, into the temples. Showing us 3 times over that wasn't just a concept, it was a frequency, it was fire. And fire is the life force here, the spirit that binds the visible and invisible worlds. Knowing this, just think about all of the ways our frequency is altered and the ways we are unknowingly watering down the spirit of things. If Krishna was the embodied flame, then Hermes was the sacred architect to protect its mysteries. He didn't just reveal truth, he designed the Hermetic system by which the spirit was preserved, protected, and passed down. Each sun is a thought of God, each planet a mode of that thought. The ray of this light reveals that truth is not singular, it is layered. Symbolism isn't superstition, it is language. It's a sacred science, a mirror for those with the eyes to see. And perhaps most important, Hermes taught that the soul is not just destined for heaven, but it came from there. And it carries the divine blueprint to return. So if Hermes inspires you to go deeper, maybe ask yourself, where in my life am I looking for answers outside of myself? And what signals are calling me inward? What sacred language is already written within my DNA? And in our next episode, we'll meet Moses, well known as the divine lawgiver and the man who brought us the 10 Commandments. But I think you'll be surprised to learn of his truer nature as a mystic. Thank you for tuning in to Bookish Alchemy. If this episode sparked something in you, share the flame and leave a review. And until next time, stay curious. Brought to you by Curious Mind Studios.